So, a week of sporting events disruption.
Yes, in Rome, a pause at the Italian Open to announce the election of Pope Leon, an amateur tennis player.
In India, the IPL, one of the world's biggest sports competitions, temporarily suspended. Pakistan's Premier Cricket Tournament also off.
And the FIFA Council has been moved due to Donald Trump.
Hello, welcome again to Sport Unlocked with Martyn Ziegler from the Times, Tariq, Panja from the New York Times, and myself, Rob Harris from Sky News. And get following at Sport Unlocked on TikTok, Insta, X for so much more. And there's always so much with FIFA going on, but that's because they're busy. There's been big decisions on the Women's World Cup and so much more this week.
Gianni Infantino, quick off the marks, inviting the new Pope to host a Legends game.
Although there's been one big debate about the Pope's stance that has already been resolved. Is he a Cubs or a White Sox fan?
I think I've seen some of these videos. Is he a White Sox fan, Rob?
Yes, but initially at Wrigley Field, they wrongly put up a "Hey Chicago, he's a Cubs fan" after the first Pope from the US was revealed. But then Robert Prevost's brother did reveal that he is a White Sox fan.
Can I just say, the interview with his brother was amazing. If you haven't had the chance, he's just a dude, isn't he? And he said he was. And suddenly, my brother's the Pope. It was one of those.
Pope on.
Does he support any football team, any soccer following that we know about?
Well, he has lived in Peru.
Well, I was searching around on his Twitter account and online and couldn't find any footballing references at all. Although, on his X account, there is some implied criticism of the US Vice President Vance about their immigration policy. And there's a link to that and some FIFA news of the week because the World Cup task force met at the White House, hosted by Donald Trump and Vance, with Gianni Infantino and others there. But one thing we didn't expect this week was a FIFA Council meeting. Hours before we're recording now, it was meant to be next week in Paraguay before the Congress. Even the FIFA Council members and FAs were taken by surprise.
What normally happens is that there's a FIFA Congress involving all the 211 countries in Paraguay next week, Thursday. And a couple of days before that, 2 days before that, there would be a FIFA Council meeting in person, 35 sort of ruling members who make the sort of most of the decisions. But at incredibly short notice, that was changed by Gianni Infantino and brought forward to Friday, today, as we're recording. I think that caused a lot of problems for a lot of people, and the reasons for it, well, we'll talk about them.
This is to do with Donald Trump's trip to the Gulf. I think apart from the Pope's funeral, this is his first overseas trip. So this would be Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. Two of those we'll know are either former World Cup host Qatar and a future World Cup host Saudi Arabia. Two countries that are very, very close, certainly. All three of them are, but two in particular. Obviously, Gianni Infantino lived in Qatar during the build-up to the World Cup, and he's been very, very close to Mohammed bin Salman since, the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia essentially took control of Saudi and has got himself the World Cup in 2034 and everything in between.
So the knock-on effect of this is that many people going out to Paraguay next week for the FIFA Congress might have expected to see Gianni Infantino at the various regional meetings, and of course, there early for the council meeting as well. Some FaceTime with him, all the 211 FAs from around the world, because Russia, although they're suspended from football, aren't suspended from being an FA. Although that did come up at the White House meeting as well, didn't it, this week?
Yeah, I think Donald Trump didn't realise that Russia were barred from being in the World Cup. But then didn't he pivot to say, well, maybe the lure of being in the World Cup will lead to peace? Quick on his feet, maybe, but he had no idea, did he?
I did ask Gianni Infantino when we saw him at IFAB whether or not peace could be something that would be accelerated by a potential World Cup return. He said it wasn't really on the agenda. But back to that trip to the Middle East with Donald Trump. Now, of course, you said the Gulf. It's currently the Persian Gulf. Some talk of changing the name to the Arabian Gulf, as he's changed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
A gift to your friends and, a black eye for your enemies. Iran obviously are furious and have commented already about the idea of this known as the Persian Gulf around the world, just like the Gulf of Mexico controversy we've already got raging. The president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, has already said she plans to sue Google because it has named this body of water the Gulf of America. But can I ask you guys, the FIFA Congress is FIFA's, Gianni Infantino's organization's main event for the year. It's not as if he's visiting a UEFA event or a CONMEBOL event. Yes, it's in Luque in Paraguay, home of CONMEBOL, South America's governing body. But this is his event. It's so weird that he's kind of saying, I'll just come in for a bit because I've got this other stuff to do. As important as meeting all of these guys is, shouldn't this 1 week of the year where it's for his members, 211 FIFA nations, it's for FIFA to discuss this stuff. It doesn't happen every week. What do you guys think of that?
Is it prestigious? Did Bill Clinton ever invite Sepp Blatter on one of his foreign tours?
Who cares? Who is it prestigious for? Is it prestigious for Gianni Infantino to be invited? Or is it good for FIFA? Because we've had, I'm sure you two have as well, I've had members and officials contact me saying, this is really strange, isn't it? So who is it prestigious for?
Well, FIFA do say it helps to accelerate this decision-making, doesn't it, around the World Cup? The fact they're directly there in at the top. But I think when this golf trip was first announced by Donald Trump, I immediately raised to both of you as we're preparing for the pod the other week, we might have expected to see Gianni Infantino on that trip, but it's going to clash with the Congress. But now he's not going to the Congress.
I think one of us said he's going to be gutted. It clashes with Congress because he was going to be a rat up a drain pipe when it comes to that sort of trip. You know, in the first Trump term, I think one of you can confirm this. He was involved or somehow managed to appear at the Abraham Accords, this kind of peace agreement, if you want, or a thawing of any tensions between the UAE and Israel.
Yeah, he was there at the White House in the Rose Garden, I think it was. But I think probably some of the optics meant both of you're going out to Paraguay. You might have expected to get a bit of FaceTime with him, but now he'll just be darting in, darting out, so you'll barely see him, and just media you are. Whereas, you know, some of those FAs, it might be their chance that they missed out on.
He heard Ziegs was coming to Paraguay, and he said, you know what, guys, I might swerve the first few days so we don't have to get a tete-a-tete with Martyn. What do you think?
Yeah, this is all to avoid me like shouting questions about him about whether he's going to do a press conference after the Congress, probably. But it's somebody described it to me as Gianni Infantino bingo. You know, somebody says, look, Saudi, Qatar, Trump. And he goes, well, I'm in. You know, those are the three sort of, you know, my three favourite words. And so, yeah, forget about the 211 member associations. But, you know, people and quite sort of senior people are unhappy about this. They think it's disrespectful to the to the associations. He should prioritise them. It's not as though he's not met Trump recently, is it? It's like 3 days ago.
Every other week.
But there was one trip to Saudi Arabia he didn't take last week. He didn't go to the finals of the Asian Champions League. Instead, he was in Miami at the Formula One. He was at a party on the Saturday, then the race on the Sunday, which they might argue is all about preparing for the Club World Cup and then the World Cup. So you can't accuse me of being in Saudi the whole time.
No, you're right. It's a huge amount of preparation by going to the party and the Formula One Grand Prix there ahead of the 2026 World Cup. No doubt. But Martyn's right. I mean, he's in and out of the White House pretty much every 2 weeks. And by the way, he's also left his trinket there. One of the things I noticed, there was the trade deal signed, I suppose a trade deal, devil's in the detail, as everyone is saying, between the United States and Great Britain. And there in the Oval Office, Peter Mandelson, Britain's ambassador to the US, he was kind of boxed in by that enormous Club World Cup trophy. That was still in the White House.
It was just missing a tickets for sale sign to help plug those.
It was.
Well, another place Gianni Infantino didn't go this week was Brazil, but FIFA announced the host cities for the 2027 Women's World Cup. Tariq, you know the country well. Quite a good breadth of cities reflecting the 2014 Men's World Cup from that list.
Yeah, if you'd been to the 2014 World Cup, it's almost which ones are not there. So you've got we might as well read them out. Belo Horizonte, which is a famous location where Brazil lost 7-1 to Germany in the semi-final. Brasilia is there, the capital. Fortaleza, Porto Alegre, Recife, Rio de Janeiro, Salvador, Sao Paulo. All of those stadiums were either newly built or rebuilt for the World Cup. What's missing is also interesting. These were the ones that were kind of out of the way. Manaus, where England lost its opening game to Italy in the Amazon, and I think Cuiabá, which is the gateway to the Pantanal, the other big natural place of outstanding beauty in Brazil. So yeah, very familiar locations.
Belo Horizonte, fond memories of that match, Tariq, because we went for a very nice curry afterwards.
We did, and very hard to find. So I was living in Rio at the time, and you couldn't really find one. It was a great surprise. Martyn, we had quite a good dinner there. Nice memory.
Yeah, a lot of good food in Brazil. Expansion, though, isn't coming in time for that tournament in Brazil. But at the FIFA Council meeting, we've been mentioning one of the big decisions was about the future of the Women's World Cup. It's going to 48 teams in time for the 2031 tournament, which is going to be in the United States, then 2035 in the UK. So it's only just gone up to 32 teams for the 2023 and 2027 tournaments, having been 24 teams in 2019. It's a lot of numbers to keep up with constant expansion.
It is. Having decided to ruin the format of the Men's World Cup by expanding it to 48 teams for 2026, FIFA have decided the women have to suffer the same, and they've expanded that tournament to 48 teams. But guys, Robert, you're right. You know, this has just been expanded. It was, I think, a successful tournament in Australia. Good opportunities for teams that aren't normally there. But 48 teams this early for the Women's World Cup, I'm not sure it's the greatest idea in terms of how the tournament will shape from a football point of view. There'll just be a lot more content maybe for broadcasters. Let's see if they want that.
I think I was quite surprised that you would do this before you've even tried it with the Men's World Cup. I mean, because nobody actually knows what it's going to be like in terms of. I mean, you can guess, and you're going to have 104 matches instead of 64, a hell of a lot more. I think the challenges are much greater for the Women's World Cup, and I'm pretty sure that the organisers for both of those tournaments would have preferred a 32-team tournament. It's much easier to people to understand. There's less chance of these having a minnow against a top team and some sort of crazy score lines, and also there is a challenge in selling tickets, and it's a greater challenge for the women's game at the moment than the men's game in some countries, such as the UK. And I think it is. I think it's going to be a challenge to fill the stadiums much more than it would have been with a 32-team tournament.
Yeah,
even a Men's World Cup can be challenged, selling 104 matches compared to 64 now, even in the UK with such a big football population.
Yeah, in such a small period of time as well. This is like what the current footprint of a World Cup is. What, 30 days there or thereabouts? Maybe a couple of days more for 48, and then you're expecting people to attend all of these games with a lot of other options when it comes to events and entertainment available to them, particularly in a place like America.
It's going to be an extra week because now there's a round of 32 in this 48-team format.
Yeah. It just feels like a lot. And why not road test it? But again, is this politics? We got to remember how FIFA and confederation presidents maintain power. It's by giving their member associations more and more, whether it be cash, whether it be tournaments, whether it be whatever, just more. And that's how you retain your popularity. Whether football itself suffers along the way isn't a question anybody kind of who's at the receiving end of some of that largesse seems to really question.
Although there were fears that the jump from 24 to 32 would lead to more lopsided results in 2023, although we had a 30-0 victory for the US over Thailand in 2019. There was no scoreline with such a big margin in 2023. Vietnam did lose 7-0 to the Netherlands, but then did only lose 3-0 to the US as newcomers.
These things happen. I remember the Men's World Cup, even in our lifetime, the World Cup had been going on, when was it born? 1930, the first World Cup. I remember at the Italia '90 World Cup, there were some massive scorelines, maybe not in the double digits, but I think Germany absolutely smashed West Germany. It was then smashed the United Arab Emirates in the group stage. So even in the men's, there has been not in sort of the recent memory, but at least in our time, games that have been lopsided. But to not try 32 first is just bonkers.
As for the Global Players Union, FIFPro, they welcomed the expansion but said it is critical that the global development of women's competitions goes hand in hand with improved labour conditions and the advancement of players, as well as development further down the pyramid. This is the only path to true sustainability, expansion, and progress. So now it's just waiting for the US and the UK to be ratified as host once they've gone through the inspections. But are we sticking then at 48?
Well, it's almost like a joke, isn't it? We talked the other day about this proposal from Uruguay, backed by South America's leader, to expand the 2030 World Cup to 64 teams for the men's. This is as a one-off to commemorate the centenary of the World Cup. But it's where do you stop? Why not have 64 all the time? Sooner or later, somebody is going to stand on some sort of platform saying that the World Cup should be 64 teams.
Are you sure someone already hasn't done that? What else was anything else in the FIFA Council, Rob?
Something very important that was discussed were the Afghan women's footballers who haven't been able to play now for many years. The team stopped with the rise and return to power of the Taliban in 2021. A lot of work to actually just get the players out of Afghanistan then to safety. But what about their future? Well, the FIFA Council has now set up a refugee team for them. They'll be able to play friendlies, but they won't be able to try to qualify for the World Cup like that, it seems. So different from the Olympic refugee team, which is refugees from all around the world who can win medals at the Olympics.
Yeah, this is a long time coming as well. Human rights groups have been calling for this for some time. What will be interesting is to know what the relationship now is between FIFA and the Afghan Football Association, which is one of its members.
Indeed, they remain one of the 211 FAs the men's team can play. There was talk of discrimination and anti-racism sanctions last year at the FIFA Congress. It was all about Gianni Infantino introducing the X symbol for what players and referees to use if there's racist abuse in stadiums. I don't think we've seen much of it in the last year.
No, I can't recall an instance where the actual sign has been used, but this is what FIFA had. But they have made some amendments to the racism regulations. The one that I found most interesting, they're kind of bitty, but the one I found quite interesting is that FIFA reserves the right to appeal and intervene in cases where if it feels national FAs haven't tackled a racist incident properly, they can take an appeal to the CAS, the Court of Arbitration, in racial abuse cases. And why it's interesting, well, it's interesting anyway, but why it's particularly interesting is the Brazilian FA president, Edinaldo Rodrigues. He's been furious about the treatment of Brazilian teams playing in South American football competitions, be it the Sul-Americana or the Copa Libertadores. And he's been at odds, and Brazilian politicians have been at odds, I think, with Alejandro Domingues, the South American football president, who recently, the most recent sort of racial incident, and he was asked, why are you not taking more action? And Brazilian teams would think about pulling out of club competitions. And he said, the idea of the Copa Libertadores without a Brazilian team would be like Tarzan without Cheetah. And that crazy thought led to outrage in Brazil, particularly after he pledged to tackle racism.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually a good thing FIFA have done there, because think back some of the internal decisions that have been taken around, for example, racist incidents in Spain most recently, Vinicius Jr. And I think the authorities in Spain have been very, very lax generally over the last few years. And this may focus their minds.
And the lack of action from CONMEBOL on the alleged racism by Enzo Fernandez, the Chelsea player, after Argentina celebrated their Copa America win.
Yeah, and that was actually recorded on tape. Chelsea, of course, I think had an internal investigation because I think Wesley Fofana, one of the French players, is furious about it, teammate of Enzo Fernandez. We don't know what happened, but in terms of Chelsea's investigation, nothing much, nothing significant outside of it. I think Enzo Fernandez is now the Chelsea captain, and those two players may have buried their hatchet. But that was another good example.
So it'd be interesting going forward to see whether FIFA would intervene themselves and bring a case. Well, we've been mentioning quite a bit. It must have been a busy news week. That White House meeting, the task force for the World Cup meeting for the first time, led by Donald Trump. Next to him was Gianni Infantino. So many members of the cabinet as well in the room. And, well, the Club World Cup was there as well. But Donald Trump picked up on something that Gianni Infantino said, particularly how quickly he might have said the names of the other two co-hosts, Canada and Mexico.
We were actually, Mr. President, so happy that the World Cup 2026 will take place in the United States, in Canada and in Mexico, that we thought we'll actually bring another World Cup as well here. So you get two World Cups in the next year, the new FIFA Club World Cup. This is the trophy of the new FIFA Club World Cup.
Did you notice the way he said that? In the United States, Canada, Mexico. That's the way it's supposed to be. I had to interrupt. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, well, it's 78 games will take place of the World Cup in the United States out of the 104 games.
It's a bit like this, wasn't it, Johnny, though? It was, being hosted by the United States, Canada and Mexico.
Yeah. But the other weird thing, Rob, you just said the Club World Cup trophy was there. This thing is the World Cup Task Force, right? Again, how hard is it? How hard are they finding selling these tickets? Or does Donald Trump really need that trophy with him because he likes it so much? So when they're on this tour of the Gulf they're going on together, do you think the Club World Cup will be going with them as well? It is weird. It's the World Cup trophy is so iconic, and people in America, I'm sure, will recognise it. Why not bring that to the room? It would have elevated it.
Strangely, there's only a miniature one on the table of the most famous World Cup.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one I meant. They also at that ceremony. So chapeau to the Sports Business Journal. We said they reported a couple of weeks ago that Andrew Giuliani, the former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani's son, former golf partner of Donald Trump, apparently someone who he's known since he was 3 years old, has been named the task force head for the World Cup, along with former US soccer President Carlos Cordero, he looked really giddy. He looked really happy to be there, didn't he, at that event?
Although Donald Trump also picked up on how excited Gianni Infantino was and how much he enjoys the world of football.
You can see Johnny's a very enthusiastic man. He's got great enthusiasm, and that's one of the reasons that you've had such success over the last number of years that you've been there. Amazing. He's like somebody that just woke up on Christmas morning as a young child and saw those toys under the tree, and that enthusiasm really plays very well, I have to say. And you've done a fantastic job.
Lots of smiles there. Also, a bit of a quip from JD Vance, this big issue we've referenced often on the pod about visas, whether all fans or players or officials would be welcome at the World Cup. And the US Vice President had this to say.
Of course, everybody is welcome to come and see this incredible event. I know we'll have visitors probably from close to 100 countries. We want them to come. We want them to celebrate. We want them to watch the game. But when the time is up, they'll have to go home. Otherwise, they'll have to talk to Secretary No.
Speaking to the Trump faithful there, in case they're worried about the fact that having hundreds and thousands of football fans is going to be a way of people becoming illegal immigrants. So he was saying, yes, obviously, once the visa expired, they're going to have to go. That got a fair amount of media coverage, that remark, and seemed to sort of annoy Infantino, because there's a story on Politico saying that he referred to that in the FIFA Council meetings, or criticised the media for focusing on that.
Yes, the immigration in a situation in America is something that the media should not focus on. Okay, Gianni. Just on the Vance situation, it basically is the least kind of appealing offer to people, isn't it? This is a celebration of the world. You're trying to welcome there. Essentially, he says, yeah, come for a bit and then don't let the door hit you on the way out. I mean, it doesn't seem like this thing that you really want to go and enjoy.
I think from within FIFA, they're trying to characterise it as him just setting out the regulations you're getting any country where you can only stay perhaps for a certain period of time, but it's probably just the tone he adopted, which is almost like reinforcing just don't outstay your welcome.
Right, but obviously, I mean, people have travelled to things before and they tend to go home. I haven't heard any previous World Cup host say, we're ready to welcome you to this great tournament. It's going to be magnificent here. But please remember the visa conditions about coming to our country and know you've got a certain number of days and you must leave. I must say, having covered build-ups to World Cups, haven't heard anyone say that before.
No, that's fair comment, Tariq. Fair comment.
Particularly unique tone from this White House. So we'll wait to see just what happens on that tour of the Persian Gulf, the Arabian Gulf next week when Gianni Infantino is there. That's the world of FIFA. Quite a long-running story. Another government around the world, the French government, which we focused on after the Champions League final in 2022 in Paris and all the disorder faced by Liverpool fans caused by the authorities indiscriminately spraying tear gas, causing all sorts of chaos outside the Stade de France. And we do have an apology now from the French government. They were trying to blame the Liverpool fans on the night, but now Gérald Darmanin, who was the Interior Minister at the time, finally admitting some things have gone wrong.
It wasn't the French government; it was Gérald Darmanin himself. He came out with some abhorrent comments in the aftermath and during those horrible scenes there, where it's incredible people didn't get injured. He's now said he was wrong in rushing to that judgment. He may have had a bias. Really, he blamed the muggers. There was mugging taking place, but really, what he didn't blame was the type of heavy-handed policing, the tear gas. He didn't really apologise for that. What he did say is the profile of the type of police they had there on duty did not fit the type of problems they had, i.e. the muggers. But this guy, it's taken him this long. He said this, if you want to look back and see what he said, it was pretty awful. There's probably a reason why he said that. He's changed ministries. I'm sure there's a reason for this guy to do that. And I learned something quite surprising. He's a very young man. He's younger than me. So reach for the stars and you can become the French Interior Minister. Or I'm getting old.
I was going to say, Tariq, I think not everyone younger than you is very, very young. But,
young at heart.
And certainly not everyone younger than me. But
then I thought it is. Ziggs, youthful exuberance can make a man say ridiculous things, and maybe that's what happened in the case of Monsieur Darmanin.
Yeah, maybe he's certainly not rushed to make his apology. Though, is it 3 years? 3 years later.
Yeah, he's now the Justice Minister. He said it was a failure he hadn't foreseen. He talked about it being a mistake on his behalf, and he said, "I was led astray by my preconceptions." Well, as someone who was outside the Stade de France that night, it was very much a tear gas first approach when it was just seemingly not needed. And we saw it in Lyon the other week when Manchester United were playing there in the Europa League, and United fans saying that they were just tear gas to stop them going to the toilets in the stadium.
Yeah,
post-match.
the French approach, with the shin pads and shields and RoboCop gear arriving en masse. It's very different to what we see in, say, the Premier League, which doesn't seem to have any real problems like this in terms of disturbances with a different police approach.
Well, that takes us from the French government and football to the British government and football. And this week in Westminster, MPs questioned the nominee for chair of the independent football regulator, David Cogan. It was the chance to put him on the spot about just how he would be as the regulator. He talks about being a Tottenham fan, talks about experience negotiating TV rights in the world of football finance, football politics, but he said he's not an expert in regulation.
Yeah, I thought that was, I think we probably knew that, and he just confirmed it. I actually thought he came across pretty well, handled some difficult questions around his links to the Labour Party, and I think he looks like a strong character. I think it's safe to say that, and I think you can see why he might be somebody who interviews well, and but I think this issue about the fact that the lack of regulatory experience is interesting, mainly about why he was sort of chosen in the first place, because he said he didn't apply for the post. He was rung up by the DCMS permanent secretary in May and asked to apply. And then after the general election, the sort of process restarted. Again, he didn't apply because he had other jobs on. And again, he was rung up and asked to apply again. So I'm just interested to know what was the reason that they thought he was the man for the job without this experience. Because I know one KC, a sort of leading barrister, lots of sports arbitration experience, didn't even get an interview.
I think I know the barrister you're talking about, and he'd been thinking about this for some time. But Martyn, the one good thing, or the one thing that should serve him well, is this issue of the Labour Party and his donations and his proximity to the Labour Party. You said something really interesting there. You said he was called up under the previous government as well. Is that right? To apply? So it's not this idea that he's been handpicked by the Labour government. Maybe there's a kind of a bilateral sense that this guy might be a suitable candidate. And he also did something, I think, I was texting with Rob actually while this was happening. He really kept himself out of from making a mistake. So if it was a wider question that he felt was beyond the remit, and it was like troubled territory, he kind of skirted around. Said this is not my job, so it's not my place to talk about it. The one I was thinking of was he was asked specifically about the Chelsea hotels deal, one that regular pod listeners probably heard a few times about how they've managed to meet the profit and sustainability requirements of the Premier League. And he said, look, this is not my job. It is, and he said this, and this. It's not, the PSR is for the Premier League. But one thing I found interesting in the answer, what he did say is the PSR rules of the Premier League are not about sustainability. I was like, hang on, isn't that in its name? He said it's about competitive balance. At least we have someone on the record saying that the PSR rules are to ensure one team doesn't outspend its rivals, more so than creating a stable environment.
You're feeding some perceptions that there's a cartel or something. It was never about sustainability.
Well, he said, I'm just saying, this man has said it himself, and I think if people want to watch his testimony, that should still be available on YouTube to watch. And some of the answers are quite interesting, and he's going to be a very important figure. Should the nomination go ahead with him actually having the seat?
Yeah, he was also asked about something I'd been reporting on and we discussed on the pod in recent weeks about Vivid Seats, the ticket exchange, which features Todd Bowley, the Chelsea chair, as an investor and director, and these inflated ticket prices for Stamford Bridge that are on the market exchange. And he swerved that one by saying he wasn't aware of it, even though it's been quite noticeable in the headlines for some months and irritating a lot of fans.
Yeah.
I think he did say that one thing he anticipates is whenever some sort of football issue raises itself, people are going to start saying, "Oh, the regulators should get involved. Regulators should do this." But he said there are very sort of strict guidelines around what they can get involved in about, and actually it is most things they can't get involved in. Nothing to do with PSR, probably nothing to do with that ticket issue with Vivid Seats. So, people should perhaps lower their expectations about what he and the regulator can do.
What can he do? So, what? Just so for listeners, what can he do?
Help to protect the heritage of clubs, their badge, their name, their location, ensure the sustainability in some ways financially of the business plans that new owners are presenting, and nominally ensure that the proposed owners of clubs are legit and they've got the wealth that they're promising. Is that the summary?
Yeah, I suppose probably I think there's probably two main aspects. One is that in giving licenses to all the professional clubs, and that they have to provide a business plan, otherwise they don't get a license, or that they have to sort of work with a regulator and perhaps limit their spending so that they don't sort of fall off the cliff. He did reference Southend, didn't he, as a club which had been in constant trouble. He was asked about Reading. So that's one thing. And the other thing is to do the owners and directors test. And he did say they will have a lot more access to information about potential owners and directors than the EFL and the Premier League have. So that might be interesting. But one thing, I guess we will never know, because you don't usually, if a prospective owner or director fails those tests, because that's sort of seen as secret, confidential information.
One thing David Cogan made a point of saying the media hadn't discovered about was the fact he donated previously to the leadership campaigns of Keir Starmer, who's now Prime Minister, and Lisa Nandy, who is now Culture Secretary. This was around 2020 in the Labour leadership campaign before Labour returned to power. Although, as he wrote to the committee after the session, the donations were under the £1,500 threshold to declare them, but it's led to the Conservatives complaining, questioning his independence, despite the fact that he was approached for the role under the previous Conservative government.
I think people are going to play politics all the time, and this kind of thing is going to make it easy for them to do that. But he did, as you said, he made a point of saying, I'm disclosing this now. No one has said that this is my choice. I'm coming forward. But you think you should, right? If you're going to be going for a role like the one he is. So how many days now, how many weeks, what happens to get this guy into this position?
Waiting for his position to be ratified, isn't it, by Prime Minister?
Well, it's been ratified by the Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee. So, yeah, it just needs the final sign-off, and then he can get to work appointing a chief executive. And this long-awaited regulator, been talked about probably for about 20 years. It's now going to be up and running. The first one of its kind in world football.
Weird. I still think what's really odd, as you said, first of its kind, it just shows how defenestrated the Football Association has become. They are the governing body of English football. Now, we're creating this other role, but obviously people think it must happen because the FA have not been doing that role.
And the Premier League concerned about the interference of politics in the success of the Premier League. Claire Summer, who's the policy chief of the Premier League, pointed out to me in a recent interview issues with regulation, saying it's not helped the water industry because, as someone who likes to swim in open waters, there's still sewage pollution, which has led to dirty water.
I never knew you were an open water swimmer. Rob, how long have you been doing that?
Not me, that's a Premier League official.
but of course they're going to say it. They've got their view, they've got their position on this, and of course she was going to say that. But that's not the reason we should not have regulation because there's a bad regulator. The point of it is to try and have restraints, and maybe the issue with the water regulator was because it allowed the water industry is too powerful. So, I mean, you can look at that the other way as well.
Well, there's been quite a big focus on the pod so far about the proximity between politics and sport in the US and in the UK. What about in India? What a hugely significant week. India launching those missiles on Pakistan.
Yeah, this was following an attack on Indian tourists in Kashmir on the Indian side, and they blamed Pakistan. Pakistan hasn't accepted responsibility for any of that, and this has led to this situation. And of course, the most important thing is, there is a conflict. People have died, and that obviously is front and center. And the risk of this escalating is quite terrifying. But it has obviously affected sport in a big way. In Pakistan, the PSL, the Pakistan Super League, there was going to be a game this past Thursday in Rawalpindi, and the authorities and media there have said there was a drone attack on the stadium there a few hours before. So that tournament was suspended, and they're going to be playing in the UAE, something the Indian Premier League hasn't announced yet, something it did during COVID. The Indian Premier League is huge. And if you're not a cricket fan, this thing is absolutely massive. It's one of the biggest sports leagues in the world. So if you're listening in England, imagine the Premier League suddenly having to stop because of a war. The sums are astronomical. $6 billion TV contract, big stars. It's a big, big thing in India. It's been suspended. In fact, it got suspended in the middle of a match between the Punjab Kings and the Delhi Capitals in Dharamsala, I think in the 10th over. This game has to stop. Imagine, it's quite incredible to think this has happened. And here we are at this moment.
Interestingly, the English and England and Wales Cricket Board, given its full title, and the ECB have said they are open to hosting the rest of the IPL or the climax of it, if needs be. It'd be interesting to see if that happens. In some ways, it makes sense to me. In other ways, you just think if they're going to be opening them up to the chances of matches being rained off and stuff, as quite often happens in this country, that might not go down too well. But
it could be quite inflammatory potentially as well, how it would go down with the Pakistani community in England as well.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the commentary around it as well, from both sides, as you can imagine, this is very, very sensitive, but the language around the comments from the various some of the players, but also the cricket organisations in suspending the IPL, the BCCI, the Indian Cricket Board. And I think the IPL, the statement said the decision was taken by the IPL Governing Council after due consultation with all key stakeholders following the representations from most of the franchises, who conveyed the concern and sentiments of their players, also the views of the broadcaster, sponsors and fans. And this is where it gets interesting. While the BCCI reposes full faith in the strength and preparedness of our armed forces, the board considered it prudent to act in the collective interest of all the stakeholders. So it's kind of, we're backing our boys here as well in this statement, Rob.
And not just from the Indian cricket body, from the International Cricket Council as well. And they are led by a very high-powered Indian official, Jay Shah, who posted on his own Insta story, "Our armed forces are our pride, and no words are enough to express their valor and commitment in protecting our motherland and people. We salute our brave men and women in the armed forces who are shielding our nation from terrorism. Let us unite to honour our heroes and build a stronger, more united India." He's obviously someone who's leading world cricket and has to deal with Pakistan and other countries as well.
He's clearly a man who really doesn't care about that role in the sense of the balance. But he's an interesting person. He was in his 20s with no real background in cricket when he was made the head of the Indian Cricket Board, the BCCI, which is by far the most powerful cricket organisation in the world. It might have, or it might not have, something to do with the fact his dad, Amit Shah, is the Indian Home Minister, one of the key lieutenants of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and also a Gujarati, and he's from there. But the comments from players as well, that cricket fans, and even if you're not a cricket fan, you probably heard of Sachin Tendulkar, the former Indian cricket great. He's tweeted, "Fearless in unity, boundless in strength. India's shield is her people. There's no room for terrorism in this world. We're one team." On the other side, Shahid Boom Boom Afridi, if you remember him, made his debut at 15. He's actually dressed in military fatigues on his social media page. And it's weird, him dressed like that and his message, but here we go. "Sports transcend borders, religions, and politics. Today, it's under attack. PSL pushed to Dubai, IPL suspended, an Indian drone strike outside Rawalpindi Stadium. Cricket once united us, now it bleeds in the crossfire." And then he says, "Indian media, instead of upholding journalistic values like accuracy and objectivity, has turned into a parody, more cartoon network than credible newsroom. Let the stump stand tall again, not just for this game, but for peace." So, I mean, a bit of a muddled message from Afridi there, and what he was saying and what he looked like in his military fatigues there.
I do think that is one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen put out by the leader of a major international sports federation.
Is it hard for us to put ourselves in their shoes with the country they would fear under attack and protecting their territory? Or that's when you need to maintain your distance if you're on a position running a global sports body like that?
Well, 100%. In terms of how Indians and Pakistanis are feeling, you'd be obviously terrified and hoping this doesn't escalate. And you'll probably be, their troops are under attack on both sides as well. There's firing across the line of control there. So of course, there is that. But there is a responsibility that comes with being the global head of something. You don't have to be it. It's a choice to do these. And you've had in other instances people who've commented on political issues, sometimes in a partisan sense, being asked to step away or stand down from their role. I don't imagine, given the power of India in world cricket, that this would actually happen. And it's strange because Pakistan are one of the members as well of that organisations that he leads.
Pakistan currently suspended from world football by FIFA.
But apparently soon to be back. Is that right? They've had elections, and after all of this wait and controversy over normalisation committees and interference, Pakistan may be back. Let's see. In time for the 64-team World Cup, maybe.
Yes, we're just a few weeks away from the next round of Asian matches. So India aren't due to have any home games, so that might assist them. Well, quite a week of global politics, sport, Donald Trump, Gianni Infantino, Jay Shah, and the new Pope elected too.
Yeah, it's certainly been another busy one, and we've managed to remain on schedule just about, despite the fact that other things have moved.
Well, delayed actually by that extra early FIFA Council meeting as the world of FIFA moves on to Paraguay next week. You can send us your feedback as ever at Sport Unlocked on all the social platforms, sportunlockedpod@gmail.com. And now, thank you for listening. Goodbye.